Hi students, I'm going to show you how to start painting today, and I want to show you this exercise that I'm going to give to you as well. So each of you will have this handout that I gave to you at the beginning of class, and it's a simple design here, and what I'd like us to do is to transfer this design onto our Bristol board so that we can paint on our Bristol board. Now, the regular printer paper cannot hold up to the water that's in the paint or the water that we might add to the paint. So we want to make sure that we transfer it to the Bristol board. So what I've done is I've taken this worksheet, and on the back, I've just taken my pencil and I've just kind of filled in kind of like this pretty quickly. I mean, I think this didn't take me very long at all. And I'm doing this. You can also kind of see through the paper a little bit, so you can kind of follow along the lines. And then what I did was I turned it over, and then I lined it up just with the corners here so that I could try to make sure that it always gets back into the same place without having to tape it. So from here, what I did is I retracted my retracted my pencil lead, because I don't actually need to make any marks on here. I just need the tip here in order to make the impression. So the first thing I did is that I went along and I pressed along the edge here in order to get the boundaries. You see how I just moved that by accident? This will help me to kind of get it back in place because I have two sides here and a corner that I can make it kind of line up, okay? So I go along and I do this. I've already done it, so I'm just kind of quickly showing you. And then you just follow along, right, until you get your shapes here. And as you can see, when I remove this, you can see that I've been able to transfer this onto my Bristol board. Now, the next thing that I did in order to ensure that I have kind of a more stable and solid outline is that I used a ruler, and I went ahead and just tightened up and refined the boundaries here. Okay, so if you're seeing me do this here, like this. And then I went back over, and if there were any areas that did not get some graphite, I just went in and just kind of quickly remarked it so I didn't lose it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want it to be close so that you don't lose your shapes, okay? So this will help me. So think of this kind of like a coloring sheet, but this time what we're gonna do is we're gonna paint it. And I wanna show you how to paint today. So once I have this done, the next thing I wanna do is I wanna get my supplies out. And then this is where I wanna show you how to go about doing this. And I wanna introduce to you some of the supplies. So the palette paper is a tablet of paper, and you wanna leave it in your palette so that at least one end is held down. You might actually have a tablet that has glue or binding on both sides in order to make sure that when you're using your brush, it doesn't lift up, okay? So we're gonna leave our palette paper in the pad. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of our paints, and my suggestion to you is in your paints is that you go ahead and just put some paints along the boundary here. And when you put your paints out, okay, so the paints here are a Liquitex acrylic color. This Liquitex is a student quality artist brand. It comes somewhat fluid, which is what we want. If you had a smaller tube, it usually says heavy body. The heavy body will require a lot more water in order to get the smoothness of this, and you might want to use it for different types of painting application. So you should have 2 blues, a yellow, and 2 reds, and black and white. So what I would suggest that you do is that you go ahead and you apply your paints kind of like you might do if you think about your rainbow, right? So you have a little bit of blue. I don't have all of the paint colors here with me, so you will have 2 blues, a yellow, and some red. Again, these are just from my studio, so I don't have all the colors that you have, mainly because I've used them for other students, so I don't have all of them. And then you're gonna put out some more white than you would normally use, okay? So you can lay out your paints along the edges here like this so that you have the majority of your paper here for you to blend and to mix. If you are right-handed, you wanna make sure that your palette goes to the right of your right side here of your work. So I would put my palette right here. And the reason why I want it to do with right is so that when I mix here, I can easily go over here. If you're left-handed, you want to go ahead and make sure you put it on the left side so that you can easily go from here to here, okay? You don't want it up here like this because a lot of times you have to stretch in order to mix. So we want to make sure that it is in a situation where it's easy for us to paint, and then also helps us to not get paint on our clothes. All right, so I have 2 palette knives here. This one was left in the studio by a student, so it wasn't well cared for, but you'll see that there are different styles of palette knives, and the palette knife really is just the style of them is just a personal preference. So it's not really, something that you need to worry about. What I like about the notched one here is that it allows me to have some separation or some distance as I'm painting or mixing paint here to not get my hands in it. Whereas this one you'll see is super, super flexible. So I can still do the same sort of thing and I don't need the notch, okay? So that's the palette knives, and you're gonna wanna always mix your paint with your palette knives. Now, I have a variety of brushes here and I wanna go over with you. You all should have a brush that looks like this, where it is flat and it has a rounded edge. This is called a filbert. And this one is a good one to use. It's the kind of more universal paintbrush. And you can see I have 2 different sizes here. Okay, so these are both filberts. They're the flat filberts. You can see that I also have what's called these are called flat brights here as well. Flat meaning that they're squeezed here, they're not rounded, and they're called a bright because they have a straight edge on the end here. This is good as you're following along the lines of an edge of a shape, kind of like the rectangle here. And then the last one that I want to talk to you about is called an angular shader, or it's an angular brush, right? So here is your brush here. You can do the same sort of thing as we do this. It's flat again where it's crimped, and it has this edge. Here is one that has been well used. It's more of a craft brush because you can see that the paint is separated from the wood. All right, so when you first get your brushes, hang on to these. These will be helpful to keep your brushes nice and safe. And then when you get your brush, you're gonna see that it's super stiff. So the first thing we wanna do is we wanna put it into our water. So you can see that in my water container here, I have about half of the water container, and I'm gonna put my brushes into my water container. I wanna do this before I get started, and then you can see already, just by putting in the water, you can see that it bends, okay? So again, super soft in that regard. When we start painting, we also want to make sure that we have paper towels. So you get a whole bunch of paper towels. We're going to need this in several ways. So make sure you have a big stack of them. Whatever you don't use, you can always put back at the end of the class period. Okay, so now that we've kind of gone over that, the only thing that I want to go over really quickly before we get started is a little bit of the anatomy of a brush. So obviously this is the handle here. And then this metal part is called a ferrule. It's a metal and it crimps, it compresses along the brush bristles here. And you want to make sure that we kind of keep our brush bristles in the direction in which they were formed. Okay, so we're going to put that off to the side here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start painting. Now, when I paint this first exercise, you're going to be able to use any colors that you want. Okay, I just want you to start to feel comfortable with your painting. You can see that what I just did is I took my brush and I just wiped off some of the excess water here. And I want to prepare that so that when I go over here and I start to mix So I'm gonna pull this into here. I'm gonna mix some of my paint. Now, I could use paint right out of the tube. So you see how I pick it up like this, and then I can move it somewhere else in the picture plane here. Now, I can make purple. When I make purple, it's a little bit of blue and a little bit of red, and I'm just gonna pick up a little bit like this. So you see that I got some on this side and on this side, okay? And you can see that I'm squishing down, and then I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna pick up some white, okay? And now what I'm gonna do is, you see that I'm squishing it down. Squishing it down helps to move this process along faster, okay? So you can see that I'm making kind of a purple, and you can see that I'm also squishing. I often use the back part of the knife more than the front. And you can see that I'm scraping up. I don't need to scrape very hard. I just need to pull it up here, okay? And then once I have this like this, okay, I can see if I have any paint that I have not mixed yet, right? Like this. So again, kind of dab it like this, and then come in and collect all your paint like this, okay? Now what I can do is I can put this directly into my water container and let it sit until I need to go back to it. All right, so once I have some paint here, the next thing I want you to see is that when I start to paint, I'm going to only take paint to the tip of the brush. So can you see that, where it's just on the tip of the brush here? Okay. That way I have control over it. Now in this instance, I'm going to probably rotate my paper around as I need to, and I'm just going to pick any shape here that I can go ahead and fill in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this, and I'm not going to go to the edge. I'm going to come in just a little bit here so I can lay down some of the thick paint. Now I'm going to come in and I am going to kind of follow along. Now, when I do this, do you see that I'm not doing this? Because this, as soon as I start to bend, it changes the edge. I want to use the edge here to glide across in order to make the straight edge, okay? And then I can pull it forward into the shape. I'm gonna come in and get some more paint. So you see I got some more paint here. Put down some of the excess paint here, and I'm gonna do the same here, and I rotated it so the point will help me to get into the point here so that I can paint along the edge of the shape and not go past it. Now I'm gonna use the tip here like this, and I'm gonna slowly kind of follow along like this. And you see that I'm spreading out my paint because I don't want my paint to have lots of gobs of paint here. So again, I've gotten some more paint. I'm going to push it down, get it into the shape here. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go along the side here, and I'm going to drag it like this. And move that into the shape, okay? If it feels like my paint is a little dry, you saw I just went in and put some more water on the brush. So you see how none of the paint actually came off in the container. I have a little bit of water here, and I can come in here and I can kind of work the water into the paintbrush here in order to make sure that it's like nice, smooth butter. Okay, I'm going to continue here, add some more along here, and then line this up, and then slowly, you can see here that I'm kind of rotating my paper here so that I have control. Okay, and then here what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in like that, and then come here. Okay, so you see that I'm rotating my brush. I want to use my brush to its advantage. And then here I'm going to come in and paint, make sure that's nice and flat. Come in, grab some more paint. Do you see how I'm rocking my brush right here? This helps me to get a sharper edge. Okay, so you can see that on here it's nice and flat, right? There's no gobs of paint in here. You can see that I can go in here and kind of just move some of the excess paint around in order to make sure that it's nice and flat. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my palette, go to my water well here, and I want to rub a little bit on the bottom, okay? Rub in order to help expedite that. So you can see already that my brush is clean. And then I'm gonna do the same sort of thing here. Now that that's been sitting for a while, I should be able just to kind of move that around, and you can see that I can get the excess paint off of here, okay? All right, so now that I have that, I'm gonna put that to the side. And I'm gonna come back to my palette here, and I'm going to continue mixing. So I'm gonna take some yellow here, and I'm gonna put just a little bit of blue, okay? So just a little bit of blue. Okay, and I'm actually gonna add a little bit more blue. Really just because I don't want it to be a neon color. Okay, and then get some of that off there, and I'm gonna add a little bit of white here. Okay, so I want to make sure that it's well blended as I'm doing this. And then I'm going to just add just a tiny bit of red in here. And the red will just help to not make it as bright of a color. It's going to start to look more like an olive or neutral. We call it a neutral, or neutralizing this. So again, I'm just gonna try to make sure that I have it nice and blended. I don't actually want to stop until I know for sure that it's nice and blended, okay? You don't wanna have any streaks like that. You wanna make sure that all of this is blended like this, okay? So once I feel confident that it is, I'm gonna put this back into the water, and then let me show you with another or different brush, okay? So I'm gonna just go ahead and put this back in my water, and I'm gonna take this and just take some of the excess water off of that, okay? Now I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna do the same thing where I come in and I take a little bit of the paint. Do you see that? And now I can go to another shape. So let me go to a smaller one. So obviously when you're working, the size of the brush is gonna be appropriate to the size of the shape. Again, I'm going to apply some of the paint into the shape here. Okay, I wanna get the excess off of the tip here so that I can start to do this sort of thing. And you see that when I do this, I wanna make sure that there's no white of the paper left behind, okay? So I'm going to flatten this out. So I'm changing the pressure, and I'm rotating my paper. Okay, so we're gonna rotate my paper. Okay. Again, put some paint down, and then you see that I'm using the edge of it here to kind of like rock back and forth and then like move around the curve. See, I'm rotating the brush on end here so that I can use the edge here, and then do the same sort of thing here. And then I'm going to start to pull this forward. You see I'm moving the brush up on end, and I'm rotating the brush to get around into this area. Okay, I'll grab a little bit of water here, and go here, mix it in here, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to follow that line like that. Rotate the brush on end like that. And then all right, so again, we have another shape here that's a smaller shape that's been perfectly filled in. There's no gap in between here, but you see how they're starting to get a lightness right around the edge here. So now that I filled that in, I'm actually just going to jump back over to my other brush that I had, and I'm going to come back in and I'm going to grab some of this. Let me get a little bit of water. I'm getting a little bit of water because since it's been sitting just for a little bit, it may have dried out just a little bit, and I want to make sure, right? So then I can come in here and make sure that there aren't any areas that show the white of the paper. Okay, I want to make sure that's nice and flat. See, I'm holding the brush low when I'm applying the paint like this. So you see how when you do this, do you see how it makes this kind of edge here? That's why you want to kind of drag it like this instead, so that you don't have any of those little brush marks. Okay, so apply some of the paint here, and then come in and along the edge there. Okay. All right. I'm going to do one more color here. So you can come in here and get any of the excess off here. All right. So I'm going to come back here and say, okay, I can do another color here. So what if I take a bunch of yellow, right? A lot of yellow, and add just a little bit of red. So you see how I dabbed off some of it so that I didn't get too much, and then I'm going to come grab some more white, or get some white, I should say. And then here what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to blend them together. So you can see that I'm blending this here. So you can see that this happened pretty fast, right? Look how nice that looks. The yellow here was from the front. I want to make sure I use all my paint that I have here. Okay. And then I'm just going to come in here. I don't know if you can see it here. I'm going to take a little bit of the blue, like that much, maybe a little bit more. Maybe like that much. And I'm just going to add it here. And again, I'm adding it because I just want it to not be as bright. So it's more like kind of a brownish orange or a neutral orange here. You want to do this sort of approach, not like this. That will take forever. And you want to be able to, you know, grab. That's why I kind of scrape around here. I'm not scraping very hard. I just want to pick up so that I have all the paint that I just mixed into an area so that I can actually use it, okay? Then I can just take off the excess here, drop this back into the water container. Okay, so I'm gonna come back in here and grab a, oops, I didn't clean that very well. Let me come in here and get some more of that off here, okay? And then you're gonna have more room than I have. I'm just trying to do this in a really small area so that my camera can actually capture this. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure that I have all the excess. I don't, so let me grab that around some more. Okay, all right, so grab a little bit of water, right? I'm gonna add it to my paint here, and you're gonna wanna actually like work it into the paint before you actually bring it here because it's gonna be too translucent. So you can see that the paint is starting to go up into the bristles, and so I can kind of scoot that off like this, right? So that I can kind of work a little bit of the water that I had in my brush onto, or into the paint itself. So again, I have a bunch of paint here. I'm going to scoot off any excess so that I have control. That's really what you're trying to do when you're scooting that off, okay? All right, so where should I put this at? I'm gonna go ahead and put this one over here just so that I'm kind of working together here. So again, when I apply the paint, I'm gonna go to the center here, like this. Grab some more paint, put some more in the center here. And now I should be able to kind of use the point, the front point of this. All right, so you see how I just changed the orientation of my brush, and now I'm going to pull this down. I'm going to come across here like that. I'm rotating the brush to use the tip. Okay, like that. And then I can come in here, right? So if I'm getting too much, I can do this on here. Okay, I'm gonna rotate my paper around. So I'm actually on the side here, and then I'm gonna kind of go towards the front corner here. And I'm gonna use that to kind of follow along and then flatten this out like that. Again, continue to kind of rotate your paper as needed. So you have room here. I'll lay that down here and then kind of glide along here. Come grab some more paint. Okay, so you see how I made that mistake right there? Do you see that little bitty area here? Well, I can come get it off there. So I'm gonna come in with a clean brush. Okay, clean brush. I'm not going to the palette. I'm gonna just come here and I'm just gonna very lightly wet it and kind of scrub it a little bit. You see how that just pulled that right up? So you see how it's not there anymore? Okay. You want to be able to know that you can actually pull up some paint when you make a mistake, because mistakes happen. It's not just, you know, someone who's a novice. We all make mistakes, even experienced painters or artists. You just have to know how to correct it or to fix it. So again, I'm rotating it onto the point here, and I'm going to kind of follow along like this and do the same here. Kind of pull some of that there to fill it up some, right? Kind of come in here. I'm going to follow along, down like that. Again, I'm going to come in here and then here I'm going to use the tip of my brush. So in a small area like this, I'm going to use just this end right here, like that. And then come in here, put some more paint down. Like that. And then I don't want the clumping, so you see it has a little clumped here. I'm going to spread that out some. Like this. And then before I finish with this, I'm going to come in here and just do a little more here so that there's no white of the paper showing through. Okay, and I'm just going to come in here and now you see how I just did with my finger here? I just extended it, right? So I extended it like this. It's so that I can control the pressure, and I don't want to press too hard, but I wanted to get into this small area. So I put my finger down to kind of help make sure that I don't press too hard and lose control over where my brush is at. Okay. And again, I'm going to just kind of tighten this up a little bit. When I say tighten it, I mean just to make sure that there's enough paint there so that you can't see the white of the paper. Okay. All right. So now when I'm looking back over this, I'm like, okay, it looks pretty good. The green, could you add some more? So you see in the, oops. You can see that in the green, right in this area here, it could use some more coverage. So before I actually do anything else, I'm going to drop this in here, and I'm going to pick up my other brush that I did the green with, and I'm going to pick up some of the paint here. Okay, so pick up some of the paint, get some of the excess off of it like that. Come back in here like this. And then just do another coat to make sure that it's nice and solid. Okay, so I'm just going to go in a few areas here, like this. And make sure that there's no... I just want to make sure that there isn't any of the white of the paper showing through. Nice and flat, like that. Okay, and since this is still wet, if I need to make any adjustments, I can. So like as I'm looking back over this, there's just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit here. So I can come in here and as I'm working, clean my brush off, right? Grab a little bit of the green, the purple here. And you can see that I'm actually dabbing it because there's some water in it. I want to get some of the excess water out. So I'm going to come in here like this. And then just come in. Just add, is there any other area here? kind of like that. Okay, all right, so that should show you. So keep in mind that you want to have your brush low or up top, or tilt it or roll it. And then you also want to make sure that your paint stays nice and wet. It should be like nice warm butter. You want it nice and smooth and flat as possible. All right, I hope that helped.